that from Cinderella. Well, most of you know I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm, and we had contented cows. Remember the advertisements years ago where you didn't just have milk or butter, you had milk and butter from contented cows. And our cows were very contented because my mother used to milk them, and she had a very calm energy. They weren't always calm when my dad milked them because he had more intense, more nervous energy, but they loved my mother. She was so calm, and so they were contented cows. Now, we had a progressive farmer down the road who had a sign out, "My cows are not content. They're always trying to do better." And so I thought, well, what would a unity farmer put out? And I thought, well, a unity farmer would probably say, "Life is consciousness, and my cows are always evolving in consciousness." Right? So isn't that what we do as humans? We're constantly evolving and changing. And so when I look back at this last year and a half, 2 years, I think that the stress and the confusion of COVID has been a trigger and motivation for us to evolve, to take a giant leap in evolution to a higher place, a much higher place, to what most of us have been calling a new normal. And we're all having to adjust to what is the new normal, even in church here. What's the new normal? How are we going to be? How do we get there? How are we going to show up? What's it going to be like? You know, in churches, if you go way back, as old as I am, when I was young, the old normal was 3 levels of separation. You had God and heaven and the divine up there. You had humans on earth doing all kinds of things. And then you had the devil in hell down below where you can all go if you were naughty. Talk about 3 levels of separation. No wonder why we need to evolve. And no wonder why the sickness of the consciousness of the world needs to be shifted into that higher elevated state. And I really think COVID was a trigger for that, to get out of the fear-based thinking that we have been bombarded with these last year and a half. The loss of security in the outer world. And that's why we've lost it, because we were putting our security in the outer world. Hasn't everyone here thought this year, I could get sick, I could die? Or there's not enough. Look at the toilet paper scare. How many here had enough toilet paper for 6 weeks? Come on. How many? We got into that fear. And then our business, our church could close. We could lose jobs. Oh my. Oh my. What's the new normal going to look at? And what are we going to look to now for our source, for our substance? You see, we've needed that motivation to shift out of putting our security in the outer world. And we need the same motivation. You've all heard the story of the 2 frogs. The 2 frogs, were friends. And you know how the dirt roads, trucks were driving by this one dirt road. And they were hopping along, and this one frog fell into a groove that a truck had made. So he was jumping and trying to get out of this stuck rut in the road. And the other frog was trying to help him. Come on, jump higher, jump higher. And he couldn't get out, and so finally the one frog gave up and walked away. Well, sometime later, he found the frog, and he'd made it out of the rut. And he was so excited, and he said, "How did you get out of your rut?" And the frog said, "Well, I couldn't. But then a truck came by, and I had to." He was motivated. And I think this last year, we've all had the motivation it takes. Don't you want to go higher out of this rut we've been in? We got to jump. We got to leap in consciousness. 2020 was a blessing because it's motivating us to a new normal where we live in union and in oneness without fear. And we live in the flow of grace and the flow of our life with faith in the all-sufficiency of the divine. If you're comfortable, repeat with me. United with God, I am safe and provided for. Together, united with God, I am safe and provided for. And when you hear things like, that help you motivate, when you hear things like, of my own self I can do nothing, but with God all things are possible, know that it's not talking about some being on another level. It's talking about the divine aspect of you in this last year and a half. And the intense energy, it keeps on going. It keeps trying to motivate us, to shift us, to heal 3 core sicknesses of consciousness right now on the planet. 3 core areas. One is the areas of health, obviously. And from the division of the mind, body, spirit connection into an awareness of our wholeness, that we are mind, body, spirit. And to heal the racism. It's interesting that racism went right along with COVID. The sickness in society was just flushed out these last 2 years. And so we have to shift from hate to love. And then the last one, the third one, is the fear of economics, the gap between the rich and the poor. And that's what we're going to talk about and focus on a little bit today. If you all remember Reverend Eric Butterworth and his book, Spiritual Economics. Most of you have probably read. How many have read Spiritual Economics? A few of you have, okay. It's a wonderful unity book. And he talks about how all spiritual issues show up in the area of economics. Now, I grew up with the old normal, which was, I call it spiritual poverty. And what that means is that poverty was a virtue. All the saints were poor. You show me a saint, and I'll show you somebody who's poor. Okay, anybody know a saint that wasn't poor? And that was sort of a virtue when I was growing up. And then I came into unity and was like, no, you got to shift into knowing that you can live in the all-sufficiency of God. And there's no conflict between the words spiritual and economics when you see God as your source and substance. And so Eric Butterworth said, declare your independence from the belief that your good or your welfare is tied to the economic fluctuations in the world out there. God help us if we're looking to the world out there. It is not a place of security, but when we look to God, our union, not a God out in the sky, but our union with a divine essence, then, oh, I can breathe again. My source and substance, I'm one with it. And then we have to shut our ears when the media is constantly telling us, live in fear, germs are everywhere. If one more person tells me to use hand cream, germs are everywhere. I grew up on a farm. Dirt is our friend. Yes. We grow food in dirt. Dirt is our friend. I'm not saying we have to be stupid. Yes, we have to be sensible. But we have to get out of the fear, jump out of the rut of fear. And then we're told we're not safe. Your security can fail you. Well, yeah, if you're relying on the world. But I stopped relying on the world a long time ago. The divine presence is what's seen me through. And then we're told, don't be in there, you have to be afraid. You can't trust anybody who's different than you. Oh my, that would include all of us, right? If you believe any part of those statements, you will experience that. There's no saying you don't get what you pray for, you get what you believe. By your faith you are healed. Who do you have faith in? And Reverend Eric Butterworth said, the free flow of substance can only be dammed up from within. No one can keep your good from you but you. Oh darn. All together now. Oh darn. Don't you hate that when you have to look inside? It's me again. So if you're comfortable, repeat with me. I declare my independence on old stuck beliefs. Together. I declare my independence on old stuck beliefs. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. Together. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. And you notice when you say that, I live in the all-sufficiency of God, you kind of relax. I'm going to be okay. I live in the all-sufficient. It doesn't matter what happens. Life is eternal, and I live in the all-sufficiency of God. I can breathe again. And I get it intellectually. I have read every book out there. I'm a bookaholic. I love to read. But Eric Butterworth says most people are overread and underdone. Relate to anybody else besides me overread and underdone? Am I the only one that's overread and underdone? Okay. integrated. In other words, I think it, but I don't always feel it. And that's where prayer comes in. Prayer isn't to change the mind of God. Prayer is to convince us until we feel it, and then we can express it. You know, the tarot cards have images of archetypes of human consciousness. And one is the archetype of the magician. And on the card it stands like this: bringing down divine ideas and manifesting on earth as it is in heaven. And the table is in front of him with the 4 elements, which represents God's expression through the 4 elements in the world. And through that knowing of your union with the all-sufficiency of God, you are able to bring an idea down and manifest it on earth as it is in heaven. Now, I'm not talking about I want, and the one with the most toys wins. I'm not talking about that kind of wanting. I'm talking about whatever is needed that's in harmony with your soul's purpose is there for you. You are one with it. And the key is staying centered in that union and receiving those divine ideas. You know, years ago, Michael had a business in Dallas. He repaired musical instruments. And one man came in with an electronic keyboard that was so beat up and so many things wrong with it. He was almost afraid to tell him what it was going to cost because he thought, God, this guy's going to really be upset when I can't fix this for any less than this. There's all kinds of things wrong with it. And when he told the man, he had the most wonderful reaction. He said, that's okay, I'm not afraid of money. I'm not afraid of money. Now, the man wasn't rich, don't hear me wrong. He didn't have a lot, but he had the consciousness of union. He must have been a unity person. He has that consciousness of principle, and he wasn't afraid. Let's say that together. I'm not afraid of money. Together, I'm not afraid of money. How do you feel when you say that? How does that feel? Okay. Will you repeat with me? If you're comfortable, I release all fear. Together, I release all fear. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. Together, I live in the all-sufficiency of God. And it doesn't matter how much you have or accumulate. The key is that you have access, not that you have in the bank. You don't want to look at my bank account. But I know where the access is. And I've come up with some crazy things in my lifetime. Not because I had money in the bank, but because I knew where my access was. Eric Butterworth said, when we establish ourselves in the consciousness of God, the whole universe moves to flow into us with its abundance of life and substance. And this is obviously what Jesus had in mind when he said, seek first his kingdom and righteousness, and all these things shall be yours as well. It's not a place, it's a state of mind. Seek the state of mind, and all can be yours. And it's not about having things, it's about having access. Creative principles always work, divine ideas are always flowing to us. And we are constantly creating it through abundance or lack, by whichever we have faith in. Abundance or lack. Choose this day who you will serve. Choose this day. Now I'm going to have another affirmation. This one's in 3 parts, so pay attention. I declare my independence from the belief. Together. I declare my independence from the belief that my personal welfare is tied to economic fluctuations of the world out there. To economic fluctuations of the world out there. It's a mouthful, but I'll say it, and if you can say it along, do it for as long as you can. I declare my independence from the belief that my personal welfare is tied to economic fluctuations of the world out there. Not going to put it out there. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. One more time. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. And the free flow of substance can only be blocked where? From within. No one can keep my good from me, but me. All together now. Oh, darn. Oh, darn. And then we have to accept responsibility when people start saying things about, oh, you got to be careful, you got to be afraid, watch out for that. Germs. What do? Not cancel, cancel. I live in the all-sufficiency of the divine presence. And I don't engage in fear and drama. I love it when Captain Picard, I'm a Trekkie, when he said engage. But I've got one that says don't engage out there in fear and drama. Repeat with me. In union with God, I am safe and provided for together. In union with God, I am safe and provided for. I live in the all-sufficiency of God together. I live in the all-sufficiency of God. And I now manifest on earth as it is in heaven. And I now manifest on earth as it is in heaven. And now, when is it your turn?
Oh, it's my turn.
Okay, good.
I'll just echo and introduce my piece, echo the sentiment that Ann Marie just delivered in her message by saying this piece, Deep River, is a Negro spiritual. Some of you probably heard it many